Morning. My name is Alfredo Gutierrez. I am the former majority leader, minority leader of the Arizona State Senate. And I'm here, frankly, because I am appalled at a set of legislation that is about to proceed through this body. Now, let me describe it briefly. I think you all know what it is. What has gained most attention is the attack on the 14th Amendment, and that is that any child born to undocumented parents in this country, in the state, would no longer be a citizen. It would be attacking the 14th Amendment. Frankly, to many Americans, sacred scripture. Nonetheless, that secular scripture would be attacked in order to assure that children would not have any rights in this country. That isn't the only piece of legislation that is at stake. There's a piece of legislation that will require anyone going for emergency care or health care in a hospital for any reason to begin to provide papers. It is aimed at making sure that parents don't bring their children to the hospital. In this case, we're talking about American-born children. Don't bring their children to the hospital. And there are two pieces of legislation which are aimed at challenging a court decision, a Supreme Court decision that was arrived at decades ago that allow any child in this country to obtain a public school education. All of them are pieces of legislation that are moving, and they intend to move through the Senate, to the House, and into law in Arizona. What we are doing in Arizona is codifying child abuse, official child abuse. The fact that there is an immigration issue in this country is undeniable. And the fact that it should be resolved by reasonable people is equally undeniable. The fact that someone or a group of someone should choose to terrorize children in the process is unacceptable. Now, let me very quickly talk about the boycott. There was, as you know, a boycott declared after 1070. It has, by counts, cost the state of Arizona upwards of $140 million. That's the Elliott Pollock estimation. The city of Phoenix estimates that in the city alone, it has cost $90 million. The cost has been immense, and that was for one single piece of legislation that was found to be offensive across this country. What is about to happen with this medley of evil is that Arizona is about to become what Mississippi was to the civil rights movement. It is about to become a metaphor for racism, intolerance, and evil. And it's time that this stop. And let me mention last that I assume this is what one should expect when the presiding officer of the Senate is a fellow traveler with neo-Nazis. Now, someone out there is going to say, how could he say such a thing? It's been reported by most of you. The documents showing, for example, his sponsorship of J.T. Reddy, the head of the neo-Nazi party in Arizona, to baptism in his church are public. His praise of J.T. Reddy, the head of the Nazis in Arizona, are public. The marches that have taken place here by Nazis in full regalia are public. And so that's why I can say that when you have the presiding officer of the Arizona State Senate to be a neo-Nazi, to be cavorting with neo-Nazis, you can expect legislation that is going to be intolerant and racially based. Let me say again, immigration is an issue in this country, and adults, serious adults, should sit down and resolve it. It should happen nationally, it should happen locally, and it should happen without neo-Nazis participating in the process. Because this isn't about hate. This is about resolution of a public policy issue. We go back to that boycott. What the business community has to understand in Arizona, is that last year's $150 million estimated cost, and that's a very low estimate, and that's to the convention business alone. You ask Budweiser, or better yet, ask the places, the stores that sell to Hispanics Budweiser, they'd give you a different number. The cost to this state has been immense, but it has been only the beginning, because this is about to make it a worldwide scandal. You cannot codify the abuse of children. You cannot have a neo-Nazi presiding officer and codify the abuse of children and expect that there not be a response. Thank you very much.
Good morning, and thank you for being here today. When you know you are on the bottom rung of a ladder, as Arizona is in terms of providing educational support for its children, health care support for its children and families, when other groups from around the country are avoiding meeting in Arizona for conventions and for other causes because they're concerned about how their members are going to be received and treated when they arrive here, when they're refusing to do business here because of the moral concern they have about what's happening in the state of Arizona. There is a good thing about that. When you get to the bottom rung of a ladder, you've got to put your feet on the ground and you can begin again on more solid foundation. And when your legislators are not dealing with issues about how children are treated in a positive way, about how education is being addressed in a positive way, about cutting services to the most needy and vulnerable citizens of the state, and are instead focusing on those abuses directed against the most vulnerable, you've got to put your feet on the ground and you've got to start climbing up the ladder again. I represent a coalition of faith leaders, Christian, Muslim, and Jewish, who have a very simple appeal to the heart, the compassionate, caring, good heart of the people of Arizona, to come together and to begin again working towards justice, working towards compassion, working towards support and the building up of this state. And not just by prayer, but by engagement with those representatives in our government who are taking responsibility to address those needs, so to say to the country and say to the world, there is goodness here in the state of Arizona, and there is power in that goodness. And we invite all the citizens, the good citizens of Arizona, to pray with us towards that end of justice for children, for families, for the most needy and vulnerable in our state. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Roberto Reveles, a member of the Somos America Boycott Committee under the chairmanship of Annette Sexton Reese. We announced last week that we were contacting businesses outside of the state of Arizona to not come to Arizona so long as we are facing this litany of horrors flowing from the Arizona State Legislature. We recommit to doing that because as a native Arizonan proud son of Mexican immigrants, we will no longer hold back so long as the civil liberties of U.S. children and their families are violated. The legislation flowing out of this legislature is replete with constitutional questions. We will renew our energies not to hurt the economy of Arizona, because the economy of Arizona needs help from all of us. We want to work with the business community. We want to work with other people of good faith. I worked for a number of years in the Congress where this issue properly resides, the issue of immigration reform. I have asked members of the Arizona State Legislature, what have they done lately to encourage the Arizona congressional delegation to focus on fixing the broken immigration system? The answer is nothing. This legislature could send a resolution to the Congress, to the Arizona members of Congress, and urge them to spend their energies fixing what is broken down. We will continue our boycott efforts, as I said, not because we want to hurt the economy, but because we want to help the most vulnerable among us, the children and their vulnerable families.